So I recently was in Hanoi. I was there for the summer, and I took a trip to Malaysia where I went to an exhibition. In general, I'm not a big fan of exhibits or exhibitions because I go there, I see things hanging from walls, and it just does not get me that excited. This exhibition, however, was fantastic. It was an exhibition on this type of woven material from Borneo known as puakumbu. And these woven materials have stories that are woven into them. There's all of this cultural information that one needs to know to be able to understand what these woven materials are. And this exhibition made that information available in an incredibly innovative way. In particular, they used various forms of digital technology to create this interactive and I would say even immersive environment where you just entered the world of these woven pieces of cloth, the culture that surrounds them, the stories that they create, and it was just incredibly engaging and fascinating. So much so that it made me start thinking about how historians could use these public spaces like exhibitions to create similar interactive and immersive environments where we could present ideas about the past. So as I thought about that when I went back to Hanoi, I decided to go talk to some people who I heard are interested in the connections between contemporary art and history or historical knowledge. And so I went to meet artist and curator Nguyễn Phương Linh of an organization called Nhà Sàn Collective, which is the latest incarnation of an older organization known as Nhà Sàn. And we had a very engaging conversation at a place called Nhà Sàn Studio, where we talked about artists and history, or artists and historians, or art and history, or maybe all these things. It was a great conversation, so let's take a look. So like I told you, I just went to a exhibit in Malaysia that was really interesting, and it just made me start to think about the connection between what artists do, or contemporary artists, and what historians do. I think artists do things that relate to history, but historians don't make use of the installations or kind of public displays of information, that they could. And I was wondering, I mean, when you think about history, how would you display it, or how do you think history and the world of contemporary art can maybe learn from each other?
I think an artist doing research is very much different from a researcher or historian working on the research field, because the artist's strength is still visualizations and forms and all kind of metaphor. So even we are researching about history and social issues, all of that, but when we realize into visual work, it's still kind of have a lot of metaphor, and it's not really like a kind of illustration on history. So I think that's the difference from artists doing research and research doing research, because the researchers or historians, they make very clear they make very clear number, very clear facts, and their own process of research. But for the artist, it might be a little bit different, I think.
Actually, that's really interesting because, I mean, historians here, or in some places might say that they're using kind of real information or facts, but you know, in the past 40 years in, say, North America, that whole process has been questioned.
Yeah.
So what you were sort of saying about metaphors is really interesting, because people have examined the way that historians present information as fact and have shown that it's actually follows a storyline.
Yeah.
You know, it's so like, let's say if it's about a war or something, you're going to tell the story of one side winning. You don't tell the story of one side losing, or of winning and losing.
Yes.
So that's true. A kind of metaphor or a way of doing it as well. So history is probably closer to art than
yes, I think so. Yeah. It's very important.
So our conversation went on to cover the topic of education. And in particular, Phương Linh explained to me that growing up, she felt that the knowledge that she obtained about history was rather normative and didn't really allow her to come in contact with different perspectives or a breadth of different approaches to understanding the past. And as an artist, she felt that she explained that, you know, this is a limitation, because artists try to be very expressive, and the more knowledge they have, the more information that they can use to build on to present various ideas, the more sophisticated they can be in expressing their ideas. This is how she explained these very points.
It's a pity for Vietnamese artists that we don't have kind of a theory foundation. Then it's very fragile.
I see.
When we grow up and doing work, and we go out of Vietnam, and we feel our theories is very limited.
I see.
And it's a problem, I think. And as we grow up, and then we feel that we have this big gap.
I see.
And for the younger generation like us, most of us are very curious about our own history, our own things. So from last 2 years, we've been trying to learn and study more and more, and it's getting more exciting and interesting to work with people like you, historian, and talking with Trần Quang Đức and other people that knows history well.
Right.
And even Trần Quang Đức is very young.
Yeah.
He's like 30, but then his knowledge is quite amazing too. So he also gave us a lot of information and stories.
Right.
So I think at this time we really want to explore our...
So as you can see, this was a really interesting conversation, and there's more to it, and I'll make another video where we continue this talk. So in the end, I just have to say I'm so happy that I went to Malaysia. I went to this great exhibition. I got a new hat, but I also got new ideas flowing through my head about ways that artists and historians can connect and can work together. And in talking with Nguyễn Phương Linh, I can see that artists really have these same ideas as well. What struck me is the way that artists seem to be thinking a lot like historians in the postmodern age. Historians in the postmodern age no longer see history as the truth that we need to discover, but instead they understand that history is something that's constructed, it's expressed through discourses. Discourses are filled with power, and therefore our job today is not necessarily to find the truth anymore, but try to understand how people are talking about the past, how they construct it, what the power relations underneath all of this are, so that we can get a better understanding of the society that we live in and the past societies, the societies in the past. And I think the way artists think about the world is very similar to these ways that historians think about the past now. So I think there's great room for collaboration, and in any case, like I said, this is a great conversation, and I'll continue it later in a video coming up, so stay tuned.
Okay. So actually, do you really think that you absolutely dismiss the perception of truth now? There is absolutely no truth.
Được.